Please introduce yourself to the members of the jury and spell your last name for the record.
Yes, my name is Chase Covington, Covington.
Mr. Covington, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a lawyer. See, I graduated with my degree from Midlands State of Law. After that, in 2006, I worked with the Midlands Attorney General. For about 2 years after that, I was transferred over to the Midlands Gambling Control Division.
What exactly do you do in the Midlands Gambling Control Division?
Well, I was appointed to the chair of the Midlands Gambling Commission, so that means that I, along with the other commissioners, we go around and we make sure that all the casinos within the state are operating within the law and making sure that everything runs smoothly. To do that, I meet with the owners and visit the casinos. I'm also in charge of voting on, reviewing and voting on new proposals for when we are offering up a new license for a new casino.
Mr. Covington, do you understand exactly why you are here in court today?
Yeah, I'm being accused of accepting a bribe from Black Bear Casino owner Avery Bancroft in order for her to purchase my vote for the new license.
Did you?
Absolutely not. I'd never do anything like that.
Did you vote for Miss Avery Bancroft to get the new casino?
Yes, but I wasn't the only one on the commission to do so.
Why exactly did you vote for Miss Bancroft?
Well, it really just came down to experience. See, at the time, there were two very good proposals sitting on my desk. There was one belonging to Miss Avery Bancroft, and then there was one from Miss Shannon Stark, who was partnered with J.C. Longstreet. Now, they both looked really good on the surface. However, I couldn't really just justify giving a casino license to Miss Shannon Stark. She was just a professional gambler, and I'd never seen any experience of her managing so much as a McDonald's. I mean, she had no experience at all running a business.
Now, you said that it came down to experience for you. So what experience did Miss Avery Bancroft have?
Well, she'd successfully run her Black Bear Casino for a number of years, so she had already had a lot of experience in managing these large businesses that were going to bring in a lot of money, as opposed to Shannon Stark, who had basically just spent her life gambling in one.
Mr. Covington, there's been a lot of talk about April 16, 2015. Do you remember that day?
Yeah, that morning I actually met with Shannon Stark one final time to discuss her proposal before I made my vote the next day. I gotta say, that was one of the least productive meetings I'd ever had. I mean, she just kept talking about how her proposal was going to bring in way more money than Avery Bancroft's. But when I asked her about some actual figures, she couldn't even give me a solid number. I mean, even a ballpark range would have been nice to have, but I couldn't get anything from her. So she was just one of the least professional people I'd ever seen. After I left that meeting, it was pretty clear in my mind who I was going to vote for.
So did you end up meeting with Miss Avery Bancroft on the 16th?
Yeah. My meeting with Shannon Stark ran a little while, so I missed my first meeting scheduled with Avery Bancroft, where we were going to go over her proposal one last time. So I called her up, and we met at in the VIP lounge of her casino. I hadn't had time to go back and put my briefcase in the office, and it was full of sensitive documents. So I couldn't exactly just leave it in my car or lying around somewhere, so I had to bring it into the VIP lounge with me.
Now, Mr. Covington, what exactly happened after the vote on the 17th?
Well, 2 days later, on the 19th, there was a big celebratory dinner. See, I had voted for Miss Avery Bancroft, and she had won the license. So there was a celebration dinner with the members of the commission, as well as Miss Bancroft and her staff. We were all seated around this table, and I had brought a briefcase because I had been prepared to give a speech. At the tail end of the dinner, I reached down to pick up my briefcase. I grabbed the handle of a briefcase. No sooner had I done that than the doors burst open, Midland's finest walk in, and next thing I know, I've got some shiny silver bracelets, and I'm putting on a great show for the people at the restaurant.
Mr. Covington, were you present in trial today, and did you hear all the testimony that came out today?
Yes, I was here for everything.
Okay, now I want to talk to you about a few of the witnesses that came before you. You heard from Pat Sikorsky, didn't you?
Yes, I heard what he said.
How do you explain the fact that your DNA and Ms. Bancroft's DNA is on your briefcase?
Well, the only time I ever touched that briefcase was on the 19th when I had reached down to pick it up and give my speech. But that was the only time I ever touched it.
So are you saying that that wasn't your briefcase?
No, I don't think it was. I mean, because at that point I was arrested. I never got the chance to open it and give my speech.
Okay. Well, I want to talk to you about another witness that came before you today. Did you hear the testimony of Devin Del Sesto?
Yes, I heard everything.
Did you hear Devin Del Sesto say that it looked like you left with a black briefcase? Is that true on the 16th?
No, it's not. I don't know why she said that. I mean, I had very sensitive documents in my briefcase. Had I left that briefcase with somebody else, I probably wouldn't be the commissioner anymore as a result.
I want to talk to you about Officer Keenan. Do you know Officer Keenan?
At the time, Officer Keenan was working as an auditor for me, so yeah.
Okay, now on April 13th, he said that you were in a meeting with Miss Avery Bancroft. Is that true?
Yes, that's true.
Now, in that meeting, he talked about a napkin where Miss Bancroft wrote down yes equals 150K. Did that happen?
Yeah, she wrote down yes equals 150K on the napkin and slid it over to me. When I picked it up and looked at it, I was just shocked. I told her, "You don't understand what kind of position this puts me in. I can't do anything like that. This can't happen," and I slid it back to her.
So what happened after Miss Avery Bancroft then crossed out 150K and wrote 250K?
Well, once she slid it back to me with the 250K, I just decided that this conversation had to end. So I just crumpled up the napkin and put it in my pocket, and then on my way out, I just threw it away. I was done with that.
Do you remember your bank statement being brought up in court today?
Yes, I do.
Would you recognize it if I showed it to you today?
Yes.
The record reflects I'm approaching the witness with what has been previously admitted as plaintiff's or prosecution to. Is that your bank account statement?
Yes, it appears that everything's here, yeah.
Oh. It says that on April 17th, you deposited a cash deposit of $200,000. Where did that $200,000 come from?
Well, you see, my grandpa, when he passed, he left me, he was a big classic car guy. He left me with his 1962 Ferrari 250 GT. This was one of 300 cars made. See, at the time, my stepbrother, Tracy, had been living with me, and the strain of just making $67,000 a year was a little much for me to support both of us, so I had to choose between my stepbrother and a sports car, and I wasn't about to throw my stepbrother on the street to satisfy my need for speed. So I contacted a good friend of mine who had always been interested in the car, and when these cars are sold, when they're in perfect condition, they'll go for like $500,000, but I didn't have the money to restore it, and my grandpa hadn't exactly kept it in the best condition. So I sold it for $355,000 to my buddy. He originally paid me one installment of $155,000, which I deposited on April 6th, and then the $200,000 came later.
Okay, Mr. Covington. Now, I want to talk to you about the day of the vote. That was on April 17th, is that true?
Yes, that's true.
Okay, now walk us through what exactly happened on that day.
Right, well, in the morning I woke up and I drove to the bank to deposit the final payment on the Ferrari. After that, I went straight to the vote, where I voted in favor of Avery Bancroft's proposal.
And why exactly did you vote for Miss Avery Bancroft?
Well, I couldn't justify letting a professional gambler completely mismanage a multi-million-dollar business. I mean, I wasn't about to give her the opportunity to just run such a huge business right into the ground.
Were you the only one that voted for Miss Avery Bancroft?
No, another member on the commission did as well.
Thank you. At this time, I have no further questions. Permission to approach the witness and retrieve evidence.
Your Honor, if opposing counsel would leave that there, I can tender it after my cross-examination.
So you may proceed to the cross when you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Covington, you were initially reluctant to vote for Avery Bancroft's casino.
Yes, looking at the proposals, they both appeared very good on the surface. In fact, it was analyzed that Ms. Shannon Starks was going to bring in more money, but when I questioned her in all of our meetings, she couldn't give me an estimate. So initially, I was reluctant, but after all the meetings, it swayed me towards Ms. Bancroft.
Now, one of the other things that swayed you towards Ms. Bancroft was that you thought Ms. Bancroft was willing to do something special to get a second casino.
No, she just had the most experience running a casino. I didn't think anything special like that, maybe just adding conference space or something like that, but there was no special reason for me to vote for her. It came down to her experience.
Oh. Well, Mr. Covington, do you remember emailing Nikki Keenan about Avery Bancroft's proposal?
Yes,
Do you recognize a copy of that email I showed it to you today?
yes.
Approaching opposing counsel with stage 4. Approaching witness with the same. Would you like a copy?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Covington, this is the email that you sent to Mickey Keenan on April 1st, right?
Yes,
It's a fair and accurate copy of that email?
yes.
Your Honor, at this time, State moves Stage 4 into evidence.
Your Honor, I will object to hearsay to Nikki Keenan's statements.
Your Honor, none of Mickey Keenan's statements are being used for the truth of the matter asserted within those statements, but rather the effect on the listener, Chase Covington.
Well, I'll overrule the objection. Let's see where we're going, and you can renew it
Yes, Your Honor.
depending upon what happens next.
So, Mr. Covington, I'd just like to be very clear for the members of the jury. On April 1st, you emailed Mickey Keenan and said Bancroft is willing to do something special to make it happen.
Yeah, I was referring to her experience as a manager. See, I wasn't about to let Shannon Stark, just a professional gambler, do that. I wanted to show that it's time that they learn how things really get done in this office, and that's not by appointing professional gamblers to run some of the biggest businesses in the state.
Well, Mr. Covington, this was before the April 16th meeting you had with Shannon Stark.
Yes, but that wasn't the only time I'd met with Miss Stark either. I'd met with Avery Bancroft multiple times. I'd also met with all the other people who had submitted proposals multiple times.
Well, I'd like to talk...
Your Honor, at this time, I will renew my objection to hearsay as to they have not shown what Mickey Keenan has said and how it affects this listener.
Well, can we limit the email to your client's response? I'm sorry, to the defendant's response and not to Mr. Keenan's question?
Your Honor, if defense counsel would like to consider the email of Mickey Keenan's statements constructively redacted, we'd be okay with that.
Fine.
So, Mr. Covington, I'd like to
I
talk...
assume that's acceptable.
Yes, that is.
Okay.
Mr. Covington, I'd like to talk to you now about the April 13th meeting you had with Ms. Bancroft.
Yes.
Now, you told the members of the jury that in that meeting, Ms. Bancroft gave you an offer of a bribe.
She slid me a napkin that it had yes equals 150,000. I was taken aback by this, and that wasn't how I wanted to make my decision.
And now you claim that you put the napkin in your pocket and then threw it away, right?
Yes.
But you saw that napkin in court today.
Yes, I did.
Now, Chase Covington, Mr. Covington, after that meeting, you never spoke to Ms. Bancroft about a bribe again,
No.
but she did offer you one.
Yes, she did, but I made it clear that that wasn't what I was going to base my decision on.
And after this meeting, you emailed Mickey Keenan again.
Yes.
You'd recognize that email if I showed it to you today.
Yes.
Approaching opposing counsel was what's been marked as Stage 5. Approaching the witness stand.
Okay.
And I have a copy for your Honor's reference. Now, Mr. Covington, this is the email we were just speaking about.
Yes.
You sent this after your meeting with Avery Bancroft.
Yes.
It's a fair and accurate copy of that email.
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, State moves States 5 in evidence.
No objection, Chair.
So it's admitted without objection?
Mr. Covington, in this email, you tell Mr. Keenan that you're much more on board with the possibility of letting Avery Bancroft have 2 casinos.
Yes, I was, but at that time, I was still a little bit uncertain about about allowing a smaller casino to run. This was before I met with Shannon Stark one final time on April 16th, and she just completely acted unprofessionally. So at this time, I was still having some hesitations. There was some question about the experience.
And just to be clear, you sent this email after Ms. Bancroft tried to bribe you.
Yes.
Now, I'd like to talk to you about an email conversation you had with Ms. Bancroft. This was on April 15th. Would you recognize a copy of that email?
Yes.
Approaching opposing counsel to State 6. Approaching the witness with the same.
Yeah.
You have a copy for your honor. Now, Mr. Covington, this was the email we were just speaking about.
Yes, it is.
This is an email you sent to Ms. Bancroft on the 15th.
Yes.
And it's a fair and accurate copy of that email.
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, this time State moves State 6 into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
So it's admitted without objection?
And now in this email, you're talking about Mickey Keenan, right?
Yes.
You tell Avery Bancroft that noon will work, right?
Yes.
And you're talking about scheduling a meeting for the next day.
Yes, the next day.
And then you go on to say, by the way, I think Keenan knows about our call. Something is up.
Yeah, I'm not sure why Mickey Keenan, he was just starting to act really suspiciously about this call. He, at that point, was just questioning me, and it was a little bit concerning to me why my auditor was doing this. But I wanted to meet with Avery Bancroft one more time just to discuss her proposal and let her know that I was considering voting for her.
Well, Mr. Covington, you didn't have anything to hide in that phone call, did you?
No, I didn't, which was why Mickey Keenan's behavior was just so abnormal to me.
Now, the next day, April 16th, you met with Ms. Bancroft.
That was after I met with Shannon Stark, but yes.
Now, like you said, you didn't meet at noon, did you?
No, my meeting with Shannon Stark ran way later than that. I was trying to pin down an accurate representation of Shannon Stark's proposal, but she just couldn't give me one.
Now, like you mentioned on direct examination, you were in trial today when every single witness testified.
Yes,
So you were in trial today when Corey Hyde testified.
yes,
And you heard Miss Hyde tell the members of the jury that that morning she saw her boss stuff $200,000 into a briefcase.
this was the first time I'd heard any mention of stuffing money in a briefcase. I had no idea there was any sort of money in any briefcase.
But you did hear that.
I heard it, yeah.
And when you met with Avery Bancroft, she had a briefcase with her.
Yes,
It looked like this briefcase.
yeah, it looked pretty similar.
Now, the next day was the day of the vote, right?
Yes,
You voted to give Avery Bancroft a new casino.
yes. After everything that I'd seen in all my meetings with the people who had submitted proposals, it became pretty clear to me that Avery Bancroft was the right fit for the job. She had the experience and the best proposal that could give me, or the most accurate proposal and most accurate predictions.
Mr. Covington, you have your bank statement in front of you, right?
Yes, I do.
And that bank statement shows us that on that same day, you made a $200,000 cash deposit into your bank account.
Yes, that's not the only large deposit though. On April 6th, I also deposited $155,000. Now this was the first part of the payment that I received from my friend for the Ferrari.
Oh, well, Mr. Covington, as a public official, you're legally required to fill out a financial disclosure form.
Yes,
And you'd recognize that form if I showed it to you today?
absolutely.
Approaching opposing counsel to state said. Approaching the witness to same. Here's a copy for your honor. Mr. Covington, this is that financial disclosure form, am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
Now I'd like you to flip to the second page. That's your name on the top.
Yes, it is.
And all of this information looks accurate.
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, State moves State 7 into evidence.
No objections, Your Honor.
So it's admitted without objection?
Now, you told us that you make $67,000 a year, right?
Yes, that's true.
And that's reflected where it says salary.
Yes.
Now, this document, you have to record all gifts you get,
Yes.
all assets you have,
Yes.
and all liabilities you have.
Yes.
Now, I'd like to point your attention to where it says assets. Please read silently as I read aloud and tell me if I've got this right. Next to assets, it says, worth more than $10,000 or a deposit account with a balance of $5,000.
Yes.
Now, you claim you sold a Ferrari for $355,000.
Well, like I said before, my grandpa didn't keep it in the best condition, and I didn't take time to value it. I thought he just handed me a rusted out car. It wasn't until that I was trying to help my stepbrother out that I took a good look at the value of the car. And after that was when I made the decision to sell it.
You thought your grandfather's Ferrari was just a rusted out car?
If you'd seen it, you'd probably think the same.
But that wasn't listed on this asset sheet, was it?
I didn't think it was worth its own weight in scrap at the time.
Well, Mr. Covington, I'd like to move on to the last date you mentioned, April 9th.
Yes,
Now, that's the date that the police arrested you, right?
it is, yes.
Now, at the April 19th meeting, you brought a briefcase with you.
Well, it wasn't a meeting. It was a celebratory dinner between the other commissioners and Avery Bancroft's staff. I prepared a brief speech congratulating Avery Bancroft, and I had brought it in a briefcase.
Now, you told the members of the jury that it was that briefcase that was confiscated from you.
No, I was sitting next to Avery Bancroft at the dinner table. I don't know why, but she brought her own. When I reached down, I grabbed the handle of hers, and that was when the cops burst in and I was arrested.
So you're telling the members of the jury that there were two briefcases at that meeting?
Yes,
But
that
they,
dinner.
but they only confiscated the briefcase that was Avery Bancroft's.
Yes, I had it in my hands and off the ground. I was getting ready to put it on the table to open it up and give my speech, but I didn't have time before I was put in cuffs.
So, Mr. Covington, they didn't confiscate both briefcases?
I don't know why, they must not have.
Your Honor, I have nothing further. Permission to approach the witness and tender evidence.
Any objection with regard to the last request?
Actually, if you can leave it up there for.
Of course, Your Honor.
Mr. Covington, I just want to go through the events before the vote, okay?
Yeah.
Let's begin with April 13th. That was the first time you met with Avery Bancroft.
Yes, that's true, it was.
In this meeting, did you guys tell us what happened in that meeting?
Well, we began discussing the proposal, and everything was going really well. I was getting a lot of really good answers to all of my questions, right up until the napkin was slid across to me. It had yes equals 150K. Again, I was just disgusted by it. I mean, at that point, I hadn't even brought up the fact of money at all. It was just a discussion of like conference spaces. I told her that's not what I'm going to base my proposal on. This doesn't need to happen.
Do you have a napkin in front of you?
I do not.
Permission to retrieve evidence from the bench, and the jury.
Right.
Thank you.
Why is that napkin crumpled up?
Well, after I said this wasn't necessary, do you know what kind of position this puts me in? I could lose my job for this. She slid it back to me with yes equals 250K written beneath the crossed out 150K. At that point, I decided to just completely put an end to that line of conversation and crumpled it up, put it in my pocket so that they couldn't get an opportunity to keep raising the value.
Just to be sure, you crumpled that napkin up.
Yes.
Your Honor, leading.
I'm sorry?
Leading, Your Honor.
Your Honor, this witness
I was
just...
asked and answered, so let's just move on.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, on the April 13th meeting, were you still considering Shannon Stark for this proposal?
At that point, I was still considering it. I hadn't met with her too many times, so we hadn't really discussed all of the nitty-gritty details of her proposal, and I was still considering the fact that it was predicted to bring in more economic value.
So when did you meet with Shannon Stark?
Well, I had met with her at the beginning of the month, early April, and I'd met with her up until around April 12th was the last meeting with her.
Okay, now, earlier you said that you met with Shannon Stark before you met with Avery Bancroft. Now, what exactly happened in that meeting?
Well, we kind of discussed the proposals. Wasn't really getting a whole lot of information out of her. She just discussed the amount of machines and tables that she was going to have. This was more of just a preliminary meeting.
Okay, now, in that email that you sent Mickey Keenan, it says that you are going to need something special from Avery Bancroft to vote for her proposal. After you met with Shannon Stark, what did you find that was so special about Miss Bancroft?
Well, what I found was she had not only the experience of running a casino, but she had also brought actual data to her proposal in terms of revenues and expenses. So that was really all I needed at that point.
And so on April 17th, did you ever receive any money from Miss Avery Bancroft?
No, she never gave me any money.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Commissioner Poe should retender evidence.
Yes.
Permission to publish to the jury at this time.
Yes.
Here you are.
May this witness speak, please?
Yes.